Other things such as liabilities. So if the fund was to be hit with a penalty from the ATO, for example, each individual person as a trustee for the fund will be slapped with a penalty. So for example, if the ATO slaps you with a $10,000 fine and you have 4 trustees, the fund will pay $40,000 in fine because each individual trustee is personally liable.
Oh, wow. Okay. So an individual trustee doesn't cost in the setup phase, but if there's any changes or penalties, then that's when you can see the costs mount up quickly. Welcome to the Teaminvest Wealth Builder podcast, where we help you build smarter wealth and make more confident investment decisions. Welcome to this week's episode of Teaminvest Wealth Builders podcast. Today we have with us Meleena Mitchell. Now she's the head of SMSF here at Tip Group. And you'll remember her, she joined us for a previous episode where we had a look at self-managed super funds and the implications of the tax 296. So this week she's back and we're going to explore more of the self-managed super fund topic, and we're going to look at trustee structures. So welcome back, Meleena, and thank you for joining us again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
No worries. So as a first question, why don't we start off with what is an SMSF trustee?
Yeah. So every SMSF needs to have a trustee because it's a trust structure by nature. And the trustee is responsible for managing the SMSF and making investment decisions. The trustee ensures that the fund is run in accordance with the trust deed and superannuation laws. And as a general rule, all SMSF members must be a trustee, and the trustee can either be individual trustees, where it's just you yourself, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, for example, as trustee for your SMSF, or a corporate trustee for the SMSF, which is a company, essentially.
Okay, so basically, if we summarize that, a trustee is the one that makes the decisions for the fund.
Correct.
And there's 2 different types of trustee. So you can have an individual trustee or a corporate trustee.
Yep.
Okay, so let's start off with the individual trustee. What are the advantages or disadvantages of having an individual trustee?
Yeah, so really there's only one advantage of having an individual trustee, and essentially it's a lower or essentially a nil setup cost, and there's no ongoing costs to have an individual trustee. But the disadvantages of having an individual trustee can be quite costly though. So even though there's no setup costs and ongoing costs, it becomes quite complex and costly when there's a change in members in the fund or if someone passes away, purely for the fact that we need to update the deed, and change the trustee, which becomes an administrative nightmare because of having to go to the bank, go to your share broker and get all the titles updated. Other things such as liabilities. So if the fund was to be hit with a penalty from the ATO, for example, each individual person as a trustee for the fund will be slapped with a penalty. So for example, if the ATO slaps you with a $10,000 fine and you have 4 trustees, the fund will pay $40,000 in fine because each individual trustee is personally liable.
Oh, wow. Okay, so an individual trustee doesn't cost in the setup phase, but if there's any changes or penalties, then that's when you can see the costs mount up quickly.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so we've chatted through individual trustees. Now let's look at corporate trustee. To start with, what is a corporate trustee?
Yeah, a corporate trustee is the company that acts as a trustee for the SMSF. And you yourself, as a member of the SMSF, is a director of this corporate trustee for the SMSF.
Okay, so every member is a director of the corporate trustee?
Correct.
Right. So basically, the corporate trustee or the corporate entity is the one that is acting as a trustee, which we said is the one that is making the decisions. Yep. So ultimately, if we pull that apart, the actual individuals are still making the decisions because they're the directors of the corporate trust.
Yes.
Okay.
So a company as opposed to you yourself as individuals being trustees.
Right. Okay. So what are the advantages and disadvantages? I think we've touched on a couple, but what are the advantages and disadvantages of a corporate trustee?
Yeah, so where an advantage for an individual trustee with no setup costs, I guess the disadvantage of a corporate trustee is the setup costs. So the initial setup costs to register the company with ASIC is about $611 this year. And then you have to pay an annual ASIC review fee. And at the moment, it's about $329 every year to ASIC. So that's the ongoing costs. But the advantages are things such as the administration. When you change members or if someone passes away, you simply just notify ASIC and that's it. You don't need to go to the bank. You don't need to go to your share broker and update the title because the company is fixed. Another advantage is separation of assets. This ensures that the assets within your SMSF is obviously kept separate to your personal assets or your family trust assets or your other company's assets as well. And when it comes to the liability, so the penalties, if the ATO was to give you a fine, the company itself gets slapped with the fine. So like before, if the ATO fines SMSF, say $10,000, the fine is only to the company and it's only $10,000. The directors aren't individually fined. It's the company itself.
Because it's considered one entity as the trustee to the self-managed super fund.
Correct.
Do you find that people shy away from setting up corporate trustees just because it sounds really involved?
No, it shouldn't be. I mean, most people shy away from it purely from a financial point of view because it can be quite costly to set one up. Because it's an added step to setting up an SMSF. Because first of all, you have to incorporate the company before setting up an SMSF. But no, generally people, I don't think, shy away from setting up a corporate trustee.
Okay, so it's simply you just simply have to set up a company as a first step. So if I already have a company, can my company then become the trustee for my self-managed super fund?
Technically, it can, but generally it's not recommended purely because of different factors and risk factors, really, such as if you have a company already and it's either an operating company or a trustee for another trust. We've got to bear in mind that all members in the SMSF must be directors. So if you have an operating company and you have a business partner, technically that business partner would then need to become a member of your SMSF, which might be something that you don't want to do. Separation of assets is another risk as well. So if you have assets under the current company and you bring that company as a corporate trustee to your SMSF, there might be confusion and the lines might be blurred between assets between your operating company or your SMSF. But in saying that though, when you set up a corporate trustee for your SMSF, ASIC has a special purpose company for SMSF corporate trustee where the annual review is actually reduced to $68 per year at the moment. So instead of paying $329, you can set up your corporate trustee as a special purpose and you have a discounted rate for your annual fee. But did you also know that if you pay your ASIC annual review fee 10 years in advance, you get a discounted rate? At the moment, it's about $463 for 10 years. So it works out to be about $46.30 per year over the 10 years. But if you do close up your fund early, though, you don't get a refund for that.
I guess, though, if we're talking about superannuation, as a general rule, you know how far out you are from retirement or how far out anybody is in your self-managed super fund from retirement. So it might be easier to make that prediction.
Yeah, so that's something to explore. So if you want to save a bit of money in the long run, that's something to consider as well.
Following the incredible success of our standout event in Sydney earlier this year, we would like to extend a warm invitation for you to attend the Emerging Wealth Winners Conference, Melbourne 2025. This event will be held in the iconic MCG Members Dining Room. We're bringing together a standout lineup of only 7 curated ASX-listed CEOs to present the insights, the knowledge, the shared wisdom, and the strategies that help inform investors making wiser decisions on when and where to invest into. This event is sure to be jam-packed, full of the knowledge and the wisdom that you're seeking, and we encourage you to register at tipgroup.com.au. Check out the events page, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Okay, so we've talked about individual trustees and we've talked about corporate trustees. And one of the things that you've mentioned a couple of times in regards to setting up a corporate trustee is that you have that ability that if something changes, so if somebody leaves, somebody passes away, somebody joins, there's no huge expense there. And also if penalties are placed. As a corporate trustee, you only get the penalty once rather than each individual facing that penalty. With that in mind, what if I'm just one person that wants to set up a self-managed super fund by myself? Can I do that?
Yeah, you can. So from a trustee point of view, I guess you have 2 options. So if you want to go down the individual trustee option, you yourself as a single member, there is a rule that you can't be a sole individual trustee to your fund. So which means you have to go and ask someone else, say a relative or your accountant or your lawyer, or someone you trust, to then also become a trustee with you for your SMSF. Bear in mind that that other person also has the responsibility to run your SMSF with you and make investment decisions along with you as well. Alternatively, you can have a corporate trustee where you can be a sole director of your corporate trustee.
Oh, wow. So in actual fact, it's potentially easier to set up a corporate trustee as an individual than simply go in as an individual because really you just can't.
You just can't, yeah, and you have to ask someone else to also be a trustee with you. They don't have to be a member of your fund, but they have to be a trustee.
Wow. Have you seen that happen very often?
Yes, I've seen that happen in the past. But however, things do change, circumstances do change, and eventually the other trustee may get asked to leave, and you end up with this scenario again where it becomes a disadvantage to have an individual trustee of having to change your trustee structure. So again, the money comes in where you have to update the deed and the administrative burden of having to go to your bank, go to your share broker and update all your titles for your SMSF because you've removed another trustee.
My goodness. Okay, so that's probably a good segue into if you have individual trustees and one of the trustees dies, what does that mean?
Okay, so when you have an individual trustee and a member dies, we need to determine what the new trustee structure will look like, whether it will be a corporate trustee or you want to appoint another individual trustee in place. And next, you need to remove the deceased as a trustee, and this is done by like a deed of removal of trustee. And if applicable, you appoint a new trustee, whether there be another individual trustee or you appoint a corporate trustee. Then we need to update ATO, and then you update SMSF title, asset titles. So your bank, share brokers. If you have a property, you've got to go to your land titles and update that as well. And this is a very long and complex process, and it can be quite costly then if you engage help from an SMSF administrator or accountant.
Wow. So you almost have to start again.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so if we flip it as we've been doing, what about if you have a corporate trustee and, well, a director dies or a member dies?
Yeah, so the member dies, we just simply notify ASIC to remove the deceased as a director of the corporate trustee. And remember, we're going to do this within 28 days. Otherwise, you might get a fine from ASIC. And that's it. No other further administrative task because the company stays the same. We just simply remove the director.
Wow, that's so much easier. And look, we don't want to give advice and we're not giving advice, so please don't consider this advice. But when we hear about the facts, It sounds like often a corporate trustee works better for people.
Correct, yeah. And it's definitely the most recommended, purely from a administrative point of view. We're hoping that, no one does anything naughty with the SMSF and you're not getting fines from the ATO. But if you do, it's definitely much cheaper to pay one fine than it is to pay 2 or 3 or 4 fines from the ATO.
Okay, so today we've gone through a bit. We've talked about trustee and the different structures. We've spoken about individual trustees and corporate trustees. I hope everybody's just found this really helpful to just clarify. I think sometimes it can be a little bit daunting setting up a self-managed super fund, but there are plenty of people out there to help, and you are one of those people here at TEP. So if people have questions or want to look at setting up a self-managed super fund, how can they get in contact with you, Meleena?
Yeah, you can contact me at smsf@tipgroup.com.au.
Wonderful. Look, thank you so much for your wealth of information and knowledge there. We really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me today.
The information contained in this podcast is of a general nature and is not intended to address the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular individual or entity. It is provided for informational purposes only and does not constitute, nor should it be regarded in any manner whatsoever as advice. It is not intended to influence a person in making a decision. No one should act on such information without appropriate professional advice after a thorough examination of their particular situation and needs. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Teaminvest Wealth Builders. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and inspiring. If you know anyone else who could benefit from hearing this episode, please hit the share button and pass it on. If you'd like to learn more about Teaminvest or our unique investment approach, visit us at teaminvest.com.au. And please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast for more episodes. Until next time, stay informed, stay invested, and keep building wealth.